Does everybody have their background of choice going?
I have started the recording just saying I thought it would be interesting if you could get like a bit of a pre-snippet of it of us just discussing music instruments. So it
I
has
do
already been
like.
recording.
I don't know if you guys have ever seen what it used to be like the 538 podcast where they would do a little intro and it was like whatever random stuff they were talking about before the podcast. And they do like it for like
Yes.
maybe 10 seconds. I think that's a great idea, Sid.
It could be even a blooper. Let's say if either Sam or I are opening the podcast and let's say we mess up the intro.
We
It
will
could be a
mess up
blooper
the
for
intro.
that.
It will happen.
Yep. Sam, do you want to lead with an intro and then we can both get into it with the questions and or should I go ahead and
Yeah.
start with an intro?
I'll go. I'll start. So I'm Sam Chev, and this is my partner here is.
Okay. Yeah.
See, I told you
I'm
we've already
Sid.
messed up. We've already done it.
I thought we were gonna do something like let me think of something. Welcome to Bloxley Balance, a podcast where we have honest conversations with the people building Bloxley about how they think, how they build, what they've learned along the way. And here with me today we have Sam. We do also have Emmanuel with us.
Hi, I'm Emmanuel, co-founder of Bloxley.
Yep. And alongside Emmanuel we do have Leon.
Yes, hi, I'm Leon, co-founder of Bloxley as well, and the CEO of Bloxley, yeah.
Yep. Okay. We can get started then. Thank you guys for joining us. This isn't about announcements or product updates, nothing technical, just purely about getting your story behind the scenes. If we can get a bit more of a detailed intro from both of you, all your story, how you guys met, I think that's the biggest one to start with. And then from there we can move on to,
One actually.
yep.
Leon, how do you get your hair like that? That is amazing hair. How do we?
You wanna hear my hair routine? So it's basically I shower, my hair is wet, right? And
Yep.
I take a comb and I put it into that direction, and it's still wet, right? I don't dry it, more or less, and I put hairspray in, and then over the day it starts to dry out, and I don't have to do anything. It takes me 2 minutes, maybe even 1 minute.
But that's not enough. We need a tutorial. We need to see
Yeah.
what's going on.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I will get a video out.
Wow. I wish I could get hair like that.
Yeah. I
But-
wish I had hair. I wish I wish I could do anything with it.
Fair
Sam, I'll
enough.
be joining you in a couple of years. Not too far back.
I'm telling you,
But
just shave it all off. I shaved it off, never looked back. Great for my confidence.
yep. I
Like
will.
you're 45 to looking like you're 25 in one session.
Oh wow. Do I look 45 right now?
No, not yet.
Okay. Hopefully not time soon.
Give it time.
Yep. Okay, yeah. I think
So,
that's
so do we have anything? Let's get started. Do we have anything important to talk about today? I know we may be announcing some partnerships soon.
Exactly. I think a lot is on the plate for 2026. Moved ahead with mostly aligning with setting up everything we need for infrastructure for our new markets. These new markets being the UK and everything around the Europe region. We secured everything from the regulatory framework, the license framework, and also all of the technical abilities we need to foster around creating our product in those markets. And as well, I think quite soon we can also announce something else. A surprise we cannot hint too much, but it's something quite big is coming. And Leon,
We have
did
some
I miss
alpha on our
something?
podcast. That's okay.
yeah, we could get some hints about what's coming next, what the big announcement could be, who we could be targeting potentially.
Yeah.
Your amongst friends. I
So
won't leak it to
we're
the press. Sid might, but I won't.
So of course, all very confidential and behind sealed doors. But we're looking at a bigger partner. We're looking to close in the sooner time frames. We think that this is a very strategic partner for reducing our CAC, for increasing the value per customer in that sense as well. Leon and the finance team made immense efforts over the past 6 months to line everything up from financial projections. I think, Leon, I don't know, we have how many thousand lines of Excel to prepare for that. And generally, I think, yeah,
Got quite large now, yeah.
good things coming. I think especially for young professionals, for students, for younger audiences that especially also switch places frequently, that have mostly also live events. What I call live events is when you switch places, when you travel to somewhere new, when you set up a new home location. There is a few things that need to be set up in order to be fully at your new destination. And I think for those people, we have something up our sleeves. I think that is going to be amazing.
Yeah, I mean, maybe to add, I think it's a very healthy mix between partners that we are currently approaching. On the one side, we have obviously the ecosystem and the tech side of it, right? Where we are working quite heavily to get new markets in and new technology, new partners in. For example, eSIMs, right, is a very big topic, especially for international students or international expats in general, right? And then on the other hand, we have those that enhance the growth of Bloxley. And we've always, I mean, from the beginning, right, we said that FinTech is obviously a very, very competitive field, and it's very difficult to gain customers, and it's also very expensive. And so from the very beginning, we made lists of target groups where we say, okay, there's large companies in the space that have a huge community, that have a big audience and very wide reach, but they have a very, very high churn rate. And if we now go back to that example of students, right? A student has a churn rate of 100%. Hopefully at one point you are no longer a student anymore and you advance into the real life, right? You advance into becoming, go to a job and your whole life changes, right? And so I think there's a lot of different verticals here that we can tap into. And in Q1 and Q2 of 2026, we are going to announce a few of those partnerships, some on the very, very large scale, giving potential reach to millions of customers, right, every year, but also smaller ones. And I think it's very important not to neglect the smaller ones, because they are usually also the ones that have a very high conversion rate because the community sticks together, right? And so, yeah, this is what we've been working on very, very tirelessly over the past years, I would say. And, I'm excited to get that together.
That sounds very exciting. And honestly, as someone who was not too far back, not too long ago, a student, I'd say my main part of, I'm very curious, obviously, to find out what it is, but the main part that I'm curious about is actually your motivation of what led you to thinking that, yep, students will be the way to go and are the way forward for this.
Well, I mean, we designed Bloxley from the very beginning so that it appeals more or less to anyone, right? So we never wanted to intentionally keep out any target group, and also no genders and everything, right? It should be a universal platform that anyone can use and can enjoy. And this is how we started, and this is one of our big missions as well, right, at Bloxley. And it just so happened that the use cases that we've built around the platform, because we always thought in a way that we have to identify where's the need, right, and where's a use case, and then build the platform around it. And it just so happened that the use cases we've identified first fit very, very neatly into that target group of being students, right? That being said, we are not building a platform solely for students. It just so happens that that target group is especially, how do you say, enlightened and wants to join the platform, right?
It's really interesting. I mean, do you feel that there is something right now where especially Gen Z is not being well served by the current financial institutions?
Well, yes, to an extent. I mean, there are obviously huge fintech players in Europe and UK and the US, right? Also now in South America. But I think we have to dim it down. It's not just students in particular, it's international students, right? And most of those international students, if we're looking now at Europe and the UK, do come from countries such as China or India, right, or Pakistan, where the traditional banking system is still the major thing that they have over there, right? And I was an international student myself, not too long ago, but it's been a few years now. And for example, for me, right, I was using mainly my parents' bank accounts, right, or the bank account that they set up for me, right? And it was a very, very bad user experience. It was a card that had a short limit on there, right? And basically any questions that I had to the bank, they were never answered, because I'm not just going to call out of the US or out of the UK and pay a lot of fees, right, for making that call. And so I was someone that had the opportunity to join players like Monzo or Revolut, for example, but I never did because they never really spoke to me, right? Whereas we say that with the partners that we have lined up, you are not just getting an accommodation, you're not just going to another country. One of the first things that you are introduced to is, well, what are you going to do with your banking needs? And so before you get there, you have already chosen to download Bloxley. And I think this is in particular a target group that is underserved. Yes.
Also, was really interesting before is maybe the digital nomad audience. I know I was at a party recently, and we had a lot of the attendees at the party actually were from India and had to either had to send money back overseas to their family or needed money from their family to come overseas. And I talked to them a bit about Bloxley, and they're like, "You can do that?" I'm like, "Yeah, we can." They were really excited about that. Tell us about maybe how Bloxley appeals to digital nomads.
Well, I think it's it, right? We don't, at least intentionally, want to gatekeep the platform from anyone, right? And what I found in the last 2 to 3 years, and statistics show that, is that you're not just speaking to the people between the age of 18 to 25 to 30 anymore. It now extends much, much wider, right? And if you look at the user growth that the similar platforms had, a lot of the minimum or the average age of the user became larger, right? And for example, now my parents, they're both over 60. Suddenly they realize they, are better served by a digital bank. And it's just that generation has already been introduced to tech, right? Everyone's been using laptops, everyone's been using iPads, iPhones, so they know how to use that. And so I think it caters beautifully to those that might have neglected it in the past. And there's a huge possibility for Bloxley to also tap into that target group, right? Yeah, I think that just goes to show on the vision that we always had when we started in 2022 is, right, we want to make finances as accessible as possible, right? And that goes for all target groups, more or less, and all age groups. And I think this is where Bloxley really stands out, is you don't feel like it's a burden to manage your finances anymore. You feel like it's something that you can quickly do wherever you are, and you don't have to have knowledge over, to send transactions by yourself or whatever and whatnot, right? A lot of it is taken away from you. And I think that works very beautifully for digital nomads.
No, but funnily enough, I mean, what we tested as well in our journey is we claim to have an onboarding journey of less than 6 minutes. And our generally highest age tester was 70 years old. And we passed the test with our fail tolerance. It means that in all of our journeys and the flows that we will try to test, and all of the general actions a user is able to perform with a fintech product, with a banking, we aim to be at least 40% faster in the tap to action rate than our competition. And I think one of the key differentiators is also how quick and easy is the sign up in that sense. So I believe that the metric there, plus combining it with a very attractive offer in the beginning and actual core value that we provide, I think that is the key of winning over a broad audience of people. And I think at the same time, it is acknowledging that the key assumption that Gen Z just hates banks, which is the other push in the other direction, right? It's the older generation which is set to only understand the clunky web versions of a Chase app or something like that, of a JP Morgan or a Bank of America. The contrary is really much Gen Z and the stereotype that they hate banks. And I think there is now a key trend that's pushing back on that. Really, Gen Z is not hating the banks, they're hating the friction and they're hating the burden that comes with it, the old jargon and the way that they are treated. It's so inflated, it's so blown up, it's so they basically don't like the bank. It's not the banks, it's the problem, the bullshit is the problem that comes with it. And I think that trust, especially after what we saw with the markets and what we saw with how crypto evolved in the past years, I think trust is one of the key fundamental pillars that most of these newer fintechs are missing out on. They're all like, okay, fuck the banks, we're super swift, we're super smart, we're so cool, and we're so fast, which is a problem because you're acting as a financial institution after all. And Gen Z is not stupid. They are very, very smart. And they know that trust is actually one of the 60% above the ground baseline where you actually get the user, where you park your money, where you handle your finances. And this is one of the key attributes that we looked at actually designing the general brand identity and building the core product itself at Bloxley.
You feel that Gen Z is ready for Bloxley, or what makes it the ideal time for the market?
Well, what you can see is that all of the key players in fintech, what you hear and what you see, all of the big ones, Revolut, Monzo, even in Europe also, more in the German region, N26, all of them originated a fair bit ago. Around 10 years, to 12, to 13, to 14, they originated. And what you can see is that they now gained a lot of traction. They now gained so much traction that they hit Revolut now 75 billion, on the verge of hitting a 150 billion valuation, I assume this year or in the next year coming. What you can see is that they become so big and so much of a cluster of a big ship that there's not much of a middle ground and there's not much of an early player right now. You see that there is a perfect sweet spot right now where you have the agility to move, where you can have and identify products that actually hit the niche and hit the right spot of a few key audience members, and maybe not come from the perspective and say like, okay, we want the entire market share and battle everyone, but say in the first case, we can prove to a fair market share that we have a product that works and that people actually like, love, and understand. And from there on, grow into various other angles that touches finance.
So, in terms of the product itself, I mean, would you say that the design element is something that was really focused on? And is it in terms of the ease of use or the way that was designed? Is that something that was really at the core of what Bloxley is? Because, I mean, personally, being at Bloxley, some of the things I've noticed, it has some of the best UI UX that I've ever seen. So, is that something that was really prioritized, and is that something that really makes it stand out?
It's an interesting conversation because I think right in the beginning, I had a talk with Sam touching about performance marketing, about and above brand marketing, and how the relationship in between that is. And I think you can apply this to what you mentioned, which is product and how important UI UX is in that sense. I always draw a conclusion, or I always draw a parallel with Apple presenting the iPod. When they stepped on the stage, they presented a device. It was so new in terms of the viewer's eyes. And they say, look, was it now the sleek design? Was it the little screen there, the little touch wheel? Was it that innovation? Was it the outer casing? Or was it the claim 1,000 songs in your pocket with the actual product following that design, right? And I think form should follow function in that sense, but the function needs to be encased in a way that the affinity with the product is so deeply entangled with the problem it's trying to solve, so that people and users actually try to build an emotional relationship with the thing. They try to associate with it. They say, okay, I'm proud. I'm proud to have that specific card. I'm proud to have that specific experience. It can be bound to a community around it. It can be bound to social validation. It can be bound to personal taste. It can be many things. But when you look at one of the most successful brands in this world, which is Apple, that prioritizes clarity, prioritizes brand essence, UI UX, you can see that they basically achieved what very few achieve, which is they packaged their mass product and made it super premium, right? So we always, like, every year we buy $1,000 phones from them, and they release every time it's okay, it's a better camera, right? A little bit bigger battery, they claim. But in a sense, it's the same thing what happened also with Hermes and other kind of brands that make mass products premium. And I think that's an art in itself. And it hasn't been done in FinTech yet. It hasn't been done in the vertical of packaging solutions, in a sense where you say, wow, you open the bag of your parcel and there is the Bloxley card in it. You lift it off and you hold the 18-gram veneer, like, metal card in your hand. It's nice and reflective. Nothing in the front, very sleek. In the back, everything is how you would expect it. The app goes very complementary with it. It's just magic working. And you don't even have to think about complex UI. Where do I want to navigate? It just comes as you go. And even when you combine it with the AI just speaking to it, right? It is not about design, because when you notice design, it is not mastered. It should be a seamless experience where people don't even have to question things. And people are like, well, I didn't even notice the thinking process of how complex my bank transfer was, because I didn't feel any friction. And I think that is the key part of what we try to solve with Bloxley. And of course, try to add that hint of premium, that hint of, okay, we deeply care about how the product is coming into your life on the digital presence, but also with the very minor physical touch points that we have with the user.
What's really interesting is that you guys are, and correct me if I'm wrong, 25 now, and unless somebody's had a birthday and is not 26. I'd like to
No,
hear,
yeah.
Yeah, we'd like to get a bit more into your personal stories. What were some early influences that kind of shaped how you think about business and Bloxley and banking?
Interesting. Um, yeah, maybe I go first here. Don't think that there was ever a point in time where we sat down and said, okay, we are going to build this, right? It kind of evolved from all of the previous projects that we had, from the work experience that we gained, from input that we had from other people as well. And there's also a third co-founder at Bloxley who influenced a lot of it. And for us, or at least that is my feeling, it kind of emerged from a very vast array of things, and just came down that we set in 2022. We thought that, well, we've gained so much knowledge in finance, in private equity, in cryptocurrency. We advised a lot of Web3 startups as well, a lot of which did successful raises in the 8 figures and above as well. So yeah, I think for me it was like summer of 2022 where Emmanuel and me kind of sat down and said, well, let's build something that people actually want to use, because especially in the Web3 industry, right? Back then it was so scattered and it was such a insane process that I was already feeling that way in November 21 or 22, I think, when Bitcoin peaked, right, at $68,000. I was thinking that in order for me to buy Bitcoin, I have to do so many different things. And if I want to go then into DeFi and I have to download now a MetaMask, or later when Solana came, then a Phantom wallet, and I have the potential of losing all my funds if I lose my keys or if I send to a wrong address. It just, I felt like, okay, there has to be now a top in the market, because I don't see how new people want to get in. It's just too complicated, right?
CEO who used to say it was like a trust issue where you trust to set you trust maybe $500 or $5,000 to do that to somebody else, but would you trust $5 million? And that was the problem, like we were trying to solve in Web3.
Yeah. And after all, I mean, it was still very, very early, and it still is very, very early for me, right? The entire Web3 blockchain and crypto thing. But I just didn't see the vision back then on how the ordinary user who isn't as technically averse as me or others in the space, right, want to actually get into it, right? And this is where we kind of yeah, had the vision to build a platform that addresses all of these issues and solves them, and makes, especially that was the big thing back then for us, make crypto investment as accessible and as easy as possible, right? And we weren't even talking about the trading thing, right? About futures and all that stuff. And so we quickly realized, you mentioned it, just trust, right? People, after all, you're still dealing with people's money, right? Hard-earned money in most cases. And so we sat down and we said, okay, in what environment can this exist? It has to exist in an environment that is familiar to the people, and that is still the fiat industry and the banking as you know it, right? So we said, okay, we have to combine both of these markets in a way that make it seamless and make it accessible, make it understandable for the ordinary user. And that is how you really achieve growth, not just for Bloxley, but also for the market, right? Making it as easy as possible to buy and navigate your finances. And yeah, I think this is how it emerged. It was a very vast array of things that led to it, but it was never the decision to sit down one day and say, okay, we are going to build this. Even all of the products that we have now in Bloxley, it evolved over time, right? It was never from the very first beginning. I think if we look at the first white paper that we did, it is probably like completely different to what it has emerged to now, right? And I think that also makes it beautiful in a way that it goes to show that not everything goes as planned always, but the way the product has evolved over the past 3 years, I think is very, very nice.
So just out of curiosity now, you mentioned we, so that I'm assuming it's Emmanuel. What about the time when y'all actually met and sat down? Like, was that the first time y'all met, or were y'all friends from before? Where did this friendship come along first, I'm guessing? And did that
Yeah.
turn into being co-founders, or was that the other way around? A lot of startups
I
have
mean,
different stories, but yeah.
oh no, I mean, the short story is our fathers are best friends as well. They know each other from before either of us were born. So it kind of was the second that we saw the light of day is where we were friends as well, essentially from the very first breaths onward, right? And then we had a period of time where we frequently met. I obviously come from Frankfurt in Germany. Emmanuel used to switch towns more frequently. There was also a time where he was in close to Frankfurt, then Munich, then Baden-Baden now, right? And so we frequently met, but it was never, on a day-to-day basis, right? And I think when we really reconnected was just when I came back from university from London, because COVID came, right? I had to go back home and I couldn't continue my studies in London. And this is where we kind of reconnected and started our first venture back then, right? Emmanuel can tell his story where he comes from in a minute, but that is, I think, where we got really close in 2019, end of 2019. And yeah, ever since been working together, right? There hasn't been a venture or an opportunity that we haven't worked on together. And yeah, that's I think the short story.
Were there any
Yep.
early stage pivots at a only while thinking about ideas? Let's say you and Emmanuel are brainstorming. Were there any
Yeah.
early pivots of saying, okay, we're going to start off with this? Because last year I tried starting my own startup. We pivoted from an edtech to a fintech to three different areas to a wealth tech, and it was all over the place. So did you guys have a similar experience of going
Yeah,
from one area to another, or was it a
100%.
slam dunk straight up?
So I think Leon summarized it quite well, where we're coming from and how we wanted to bring the Web3 world a little bit closer to the TradFi world. And the interesting part here is that we wrote our initial white paper and raised initial seed capital or pre-seed capital onto that. It was pretty minor, but it got us started. We were just still us two. And while building the first MVP and designing all of the screens, we noticed super quick that the very, very deep DeFi angle. There was the time with NFTs, there was the time with liquidity staking, there was a time where you also had all of these actually Web3 games coming up with Illuvium, Sandbox. There was a lot of hype around different things. We were initially much more focused on the virtual asset part of things. We were initially also planning to include a virtual asset exchange where we combined a also from a German founder protocol called Luxo, which in our eyes really much solved the key issue with NFTs or in itself crypto tokens not being able to transfer a lot of on-chain data. And it's pretty much the sense of how DeFi can we get, how much information we can actually put on chain while not being compromised on actual databases that touch the real internet. How distributed can we get? And what we noticed is that the world was not merely ready for all of this decentralization. And also there were a lot of buzz around how distributed the services really were in terms of where the nodes are, who controls it. And it's then actually rocket science in terms of figuring out who owns all of the nodes from a blockchain, which chain is actually truly or as much as it can be decentralized. Where can you also neglect gas fees to actually transact on a high volume basis? And it was just not feasible for us to really integrate the full vision in that sense. Decentralized identity was one of the big parts as well, attaching your personal credit scores, your personal health insurance scores, your personal data, KYC information in a semi-NFT token with a key value storage that is basically able to transfer on chain to save time as a login with Google, but on chain kind of way. A lot of things in that sense from that Blocks ID originated and is now what we have also in the app itself, but on a more traditional way. And we have some cool plans with Blocks ID, but it's to come to the future. And yeah, I think general pivots in the product sense were about that. But also not only product and feasibility is one sense, but also regulatory landscape and public vision is something. When FTX happened, we really faced a lot of issues also from the licensing part. That was our first big delay that we encountered is from a licensing end due to the general landscape not being as open.
Let's talk about fintech landscape. What trends are you seeing in fintech right now?
Well, you see generally a lot of things, right? you can see DeFi stepping in a little bit more. You can see especially also, of course, everybody's talking about stablecoins, how stablecoins are now touching the real world. I think that is one of the most, I think, viable trends for 2026 for lots and most of the fintechs, right? But I also see, and this is also where Bloxley touches as well, is a general key trend of rebundling. What you saw is that, and it really is trackable down to a long period of time after the dot-com bubble, where you basically even had the example of Sotheby's, where you also were able to rent property and to get, there was so many different things on one side, but from that on Airbnb originated, right? You had then a specification of a certain angle of things. Then, for example, PayPal came around and solved the easy payment and easy money transfer method between people. A specification of form is also Venmo in that sense, right? And then you can see specific niche providers trying to solve niche issues. There is now buy now, pay later and credit application. There's Klarna. There is even only focused on money transfers in the beginning, TransferWise, originating then into Wise. There's a lot of things happening, and it seems like that now also when you open your iPhone and you're also into crypto, you have now a MetaMask, you might have a Revolut, you might have a Wise, you might have a PayPal, you might have a whatever. You have like 7-8 apps on your phone. And what you can see is that there is now a key trend of remerging services, of rebundling services again into a centralized, we can call it super app, or into a centralized way where people say, okay, that's my go-to shop. I don't want to spend time with 10 signups. I don't want to manage all of this stuff, right? And now is the right timing for this trend to continue, because what you can see is you have these super clusters in Latin America where you have Nubank, right? With over 100 billion valuation, 80 million customers, that's trying to build that around that scope. You have Revolut in the Western Europe side, where you can see there's definitely products that go beyond the typical banking scape, but also touching a little bit beyond, calling it lifestyle products, calling it other additional perks. And what we do is essentially focusing on making sure rebundling happens in the perfect way. And I think that the age of AI, the age of how software providers establish themselves, the way that the landscape is set up right now, we as Bloxley believe that rebundling can truly
The idea of having the different communities, this is something we see in marketing in Web3, where you have so many different chains in Web3, and a lot of them have issues talking to each other, or it's expensive, right? Because you have the gas fees to get from chain to chain. And I think one of the most underappreciated things in Web3 right now is interop, at least from a marketing perspective, because if you can connect Solana to Polkadot, suddenly you have a much bigger audience and a much bigger user base than you'd have if you just had these small little individual communities all over. And being able to tie all that together in a single app, I think, is going to make a huge difference. And not having your MetaMask community versus your Kraken community and things like that.
I see it also in the way, and that's a good point you mentioned there. It's really about also catching everyone on a personal note here, because everybody has different problems they need to solve on their everyday life, right? Bloxley's mission is really, especially for the B2C customer, to solve all of the everyday money problems and everything beyond in terms of the key trends, supporting that through crypto banking, and AI. We do not want to clutter things and say, okay, we're a shop that does everything. Rather, we are a agile system that adapts to your needs. And this is what we also try in terms of our cross-selling strategy, in terms of the products that we create. And I have to draw back the example to Apple. What makes the Apple headphones or the iPods cool is not the extraordinary sound or the deal-breaking quality or whatever it is. The cool thing is with that thing is that paired with a MacBook and paired with an iPhone, it knows exactly you want to now look a video on your phone, and now you want to look a video on your Mac. And it just jumps over, you just flip it open, it does what it needs to do. And that is about the ecosystem power, that is about cross-selling, that is about making users feel that one product talks to the other product, makes it better, enhances it. And I think there we can have a lot of improvement that is not tapped into yet in fintech.
I think building on the AI side now, what would you say is something that Bloxley is doing to actually utilize and take advantage of AI and how it works towards the bundling aspect, as you mentioned, with the whole ecosystem?
Leon, do you want to go for it?
Yeah, sure. I think there's two sides to it again, right? There's obviously how do we leverage AI internally for our processes and our workflows. That is, I think the boring part of it, right? It's becoming so good that it almost, yeah, anyone who's not using AI, Perplexity, ChatGPT, you name it, right, is falling behind, right? There's so many tedious tasks that AI can do for you, right? That just, take away so much, or it gives me back so much time in my day, right? And I can get 10 more tasks done now that we have those tools. But on a level we as Bloxley want to offer our customers, I think that is the interesting part here. And it starts with a voice and text to action tool, right? That is able to perform any task that you want to perform inside of the app. So that goes from sending transfers, investing, and buying Bitcoin, for example. But it could also be at a later stage, if we have those integrations, be booking entire travels for you. Because when, for example, you go into the AI and we call it a Moneypenny, you go into Moneypenny and you ask it, I'm going to New York for the weekend, please plan my trip. It's going to list you potential hotels. You can book it directly. You can directly book the restaurants. We can set budgets, right? And it goes so deep. And this is just one use case of so many that we can do. Think about any integration that we want to have or that Bloxley could benefit from, right? It is able to transform that and lift it to another.
Could Moneypenny handle bill splitting?
Absolutely, right? As I said, any task that you can perform in the app, it can do for you, right? So bill splitting is one of the large features that we like to go out with, or that we think is Bloxley specific. You can go into Moneypenny and either you type it or you speak into it and say, well, I'm sitting in a restaurant, the bill is $100 and please divide it by 4, right? And so
Yep.
suddenly it creates a QR code, it creates link, right? And it allows your peers to contribute to the bill, right? Without the need for anyone else other than you to have Bloxley, right? And I think that's the
Yep.
beauty of it. And it's done within a split second without you having to go onto 10 different tabs and selecting what you want to do. It just does it for you, right? And I think the beauty of it is, if we go back what we spoke 20 minutes ago, was what is the target group, right? But what about digital nomads, for example? So it learns. Obviously, it knows what kind of person you are. The way that you speak with it, it adapts and it learns. So you could be someone just going and speaking inside of the app and say, I need to pay my son's bills, right?
Yep.
And then obviously that is a very, very broad thing to say to the AI. So what can it do with that? It basically analyzes, have you some clustered an account as your son? Would I immediately ask you, okay, do you want to send money to your son, or do you want to pay his bills on his behalf, right? And there's a lot of things that we can do, but within a few seconds, I would say, or with a few inputs, it will very, very quickly guide you to the desired outcome that you want. And it's not just about customer support, right, that it can also handle. It is more about really taking off those tasks for you, right? And another example that I always really like is, you can set, for example, certain behaviors. So let's say you always get $3,000 on the first of every month, right? It would automatically, obviously, be contributed to your rent, but you can also put a budget or a sub pocket for your groceries and your restaurant visits and whatever and whatnot you want to set. But you can also say, out of those $3,000 that come in every month, dedicate or invest automatically $100 into Bitcoin and $50 into Solana and $20 into the S&P 500. I'm just putting some figures out there, right? So yeah, it does all of that for you automatically. And I think that is what the real value is. It's not about systems that run in the back or that help with customer support, but it is, again, about enhancing your life and taking or giving you back time that you have then for doing other things.
Yep.
I love
No.
that. And I love how it's like tearing down these points of friction that most people have lived with so long they don't even realize are there. I love how you said, like, okay, well, if you're gonna send money. I have a daughter who's going to be going away to college in a couple of years, and you send the money. You don't just have to send the money and hope they spend it the right way. You could say, okay, well, I want to pay her dorm fee, or I want to pay for her phone bill, and you know that's going to be spent the right way. And that was something that was like a black hole before.
Exactly. Exactly. And again, I mean, also we didn't just say, okay, we have to include an AI into Bloxley, right? I mean it's a huge buzzword, everyone's doing AI and whatnot. But we actually 3 years or 3.5 years back, we thought, okay, managing your finances is something that most people don't want to do, right? Because it is usually connected to something negative, right? Most people struggle with their finances. They don't want to open their bank account and see low numbers every day. I've been there myself, right, in university. So we've said, okay, looking at that and also looking at how tech and how social interactions have evolved over the year, you see that especially the younger generations have such a small attention span, right? If you look at all of those Instagram reels and TikTok and whatever and whatnot, we say, okay, as a contrary to many other apps, we don't want to keep you inside of the app as long as possible. We want to keep you inside of the app as shortly as possible, right? And get your stuff done and actually do the things that matter and that you value, right?
In addition to this, and I think this is the last part towards AI, is it's more of a logical thesis that we had. But since so many tools bring out AI and so many tools leverage that for customer support, for different other reasons, we think, or we always thought about the last hurdle any AI will have to acting as like a daily concierge, right? Like your personal Jarvis from Iron Man or whatever it is, right? There might be AIs that might be better for research, might be better for writing content, might be better for creative tasks, but as acting like a personal Jarvis kind of concierge in your life, there will always be the point of a paywall. There will always be the point of you having to enter card details to pay for a service on an external platform. It might be an Airbnb, it might be an Uber, it might be whatever it is of a DoorDash or whatnot, right? Or online shopping that is dedicated through agents and whatnot. However, there is the paywall and there is the moment where you have to either connect the service and the services will get easier to connect, but you will always need a card and you will always need an account to draw money from. It could be in the future, of course, also a wallet with USDT on it, for example. But however, our logical thesis is that if there is some sort of daily life concierge that helps you book stuff, that helps you perform actions, primarily financially related in the first case, but also then in terms of growing your money, in terms of investing, in terms of advice on the markets. We believe that the AI or the concierge that you will speak to has to be very closely living to your financial institution because it just saves double the effort. All of the data that can be derived of your financial behavior will give all of the information to your concierge to make sure that you, one, spend your money as effectively as possible because you don't have to sit on booking.com and book your trip with your wife or with your girlfriend. It does it for you and it even knows your budgets. It even knows your spending. It suggests even nice stuff and you can sign off of that. You can do all of the examples that Leon has mentioned, right? Leon has mentioned. And I think that if the thesis is true that the primary concierge will live in a financial institution, I think we have a great chance of being one of the forefront AIs in that market.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, I mean, it's the first time I'm hearing of, well, seeing at a fintech where there's an AI being implemented which goes beyond just a chatbot or some sort of a support tool or something that just, let's say, talks to you. This is the first time I'm seeing an AI that actually does something, that executes on something, which I think is definitely a game changer in this. Like, I've not seen or heard of any other platform getting to this level of execution with AI this early on, at least. So yeah, I think it's very interesting to build on.
Yeah.
I think, moving on now and just to conclude a couple of things. The first question that I had was if both you and Leon could go back, let's say, to when you were in the founding days of Bloxley, what is a piece of advice you would give to yourselves? Just general startup advice and nothing specific to product, but generally in terms of the way you'll go about building this, if there's a single piece of advice that you could potentially give to your younger self.
Yeah, I think a single piece of advice is very difficult. Wow, that's a tough one. I would say that you have to expect that most things don't go to plan and don't go the way you intend them to go, right? So you have to be prepared that there will always be setbacks, right? And you are always scrambling for more and more invest, especially in the fintech industry, which is something that we didn't really underestimate in the beginning. But yeah, at the same time, we also did, right? There's a lot of things that quickly have to be paid. A lot of vendors, licensings, and everything is very, very expensive. A single piece of advice, again, is very difficult to say, but I would just go back in time and tell myself to be a little bit more relaxed, right? Because there's a lot of things that you can't control or that are out of your control. And for me, what I found is that I always used to get very, very upset or stressed with things not going to plan, and it's just a part of it. So I think I went into this journey with the expectation that within a year's time I would have the entire Bloxley vision already live, and there's already 10,000 customers using it, right? And I think with that not happening, or with setbacks along the way, it was always a very negative thing, but it actually isn't, right? It all brought us now to this moment, and we're still here as a startup. We've still survived, and so I think that I would go with that, is to not be too dramatic with things not going the way that you intend them to do.
A key advice that I would give anyone that's starting out is bring something out first. You can make it perfect after. Just make it exist, right? Because when it's real, then you can build off of that. Traction and momentum is the most important thing. Everything else comes after, right? The plane cannot fly without its speed. It could be a shit plane and it can die quite quickly, right? But people tend to plan so much and tend to want to make things so theoretically perfect, right? That it never gets even to the runway where the plane can take off. Rather, getting into the doing and getting something going will actually attract the right thing or the wrong thing, but at least you failed quickly. At least you have a very, very quick turnaround about things. And the second thing is, I would tell everyone to be utterly delusional. To be delusional to a point where you actually say to yourself, how can I continue? I'm so stuck. I don't see any solution. I don't see any way forward. How should this now play out? Because there will be, similar to, we always saw examples, or we drew examples to video games. You think you beat a level and then you come to the next level and it's impossibly hard to beat. It is, you just see the fight that you're about to fight and you're like, yeah, there's no way I cannot get this done, right? But in the same sense, as Leon said, you need to be accepting and realistic about timeframes and about things not going to plan. You have to be at the same time utterly delusional to push yourself through things, because otherwise you're not able to withstand the trials that will come towards you, because there will be many.
I think that's a great piece of advice for all the, I'd say, students or founders who are going to watch this in the short clip format on LinkedIn and Sam post it. But yeah, no, that's very useful. I think combining both sides of one being realistic and the other one being utterly delusional, it just shows the different experiences of founders. Sam, do you have any other questions?
Questions. I just like to thank Leon and Emmanuel for their time today and for being here and on
Thank you,
our
guys.
podcast.
Yeah, thank you for leading this discussion. I think it was great, and yeah, it was probably the first time that we get to share our perspective and what we're about and where we come from, right? So yeah, it was good stuff. So thank you for that.
It's so interesting because I mean, how many 25-year-olds start a fintech company? That is an amazing story.
I mean, from what we've heard from people who've been in the industry for quite some time, we are the youngest that they know, right? Or that they have ever heard of. You have to put in mind that I was 22 when we started this, right? And Emmanuel, I think you were already 23, right? So yeah, it's been quite challenging. I think what I did notice or didn't notice in a way as well is that people don't treat me from above, right? I expected that people were, oh yeah, these guys are so young, they can't deliver anything, which actually hasn't been the case in fintech, right? And I thought that to be very interesting. And I haven't made any negative experiences in that kind of way.